Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. Today we are going to talk all about Watson marketing. I'm John Chang, product marketer for IBM Watson Marketing, and I am so excited to be joined by two experts from Wiley Education Services.
Hi, I'm Craig Mazer. I'm the manager of digital content production. What that means is our team's responsible for over 40 websites and hundreds of landing pages.
And I'm Blaine Helmig. I'm the Senior Manager of Systems Engineering, and the role I play at Wiley Education Services is a Solutions Architect role. My team also helps build all of the different web properties, all the technical servers, all the underlying infrastructure, etc.
Awesome. We actually had you for a webinar not too long ago, and we're having you back to do a deeper dive because the focus of that webinar was very specifically a little higher level about technical and non-technical marketing, but we had so many questions that wanted to dive into how technical should people get when assessing things like Watson Content Hub and Watson Campaign Automation. So you two have a great onboarding story. Would you mind sharing a little bit about how you think through technical and non-technical when assessing tools like a Content Hub?
Sure. So Wiley, the larger organization that we belong to, is actually a 200-year-old organization, which is really crazy to work for an organization that's got that type of history. One of the reasons I was really excited to come to Wiley is because I knew an organization that was that old has to have innovation at its core. So coming to an organization like that and being able to participate in that kind of innovation culture was really, really important for me personally. And then to work with IBM, another organization that's been around for a really long time. A little bit. Also, not as old as Wiley, but also very deeply steeped in innovation. It just makes a lot of sense from a business to business perspective to work together. So Wiley Education Services is a division of Wiley where we provide online program management and student recruitment services for higher education partners. So we actually serve over 60 university partners today, which represent over 600 different online programs. Together, we work on the systems overall that drive that experience for those end students. So we're sort of the top of the funnel. We really are connecting the student with their future. So it's a very fulfilling role as well. We're making a positive impact in people's lives, so we really, really love it.
So today, having all these different websites, all these different partners, we have a ton of different kinds of assets, from images to videos to documents. And to date, we were just storing them in our individual CMSs. They were all over the place. And so we recognized that both from an organizational governance standpoint, that having a DAM was critical. Also for delivery speed improvement, having a CDN delivering those assets. And so we began probably about a year ago looking at providers that could meet our needs. So we created a rubric, all the different high-level requirements we had that addressed all our unique needs as one business managing multiple brands, and went from 21 different vendors down to 6 finalists, and ultimately we went with Watson Content Hub.
Yeah, got it.
What's great is that Watson was already an incumbent in the organization, so there was a different group.
But we blocked that out.
We tried to keep it separate because we wanted to approach this as if IBM was not an incumbent in the organization. Obviously, it would have been really easy for us to go, yeah, Watson is it. We'll just roll with that. They are already using WCA. WCH is a natural fit, but we wanted to approach it new, as if we aren't giving any deference to an incumbent organization. We want to approach this from scratch. So the rubric that we put together, we evaluated Watson Content Hub against 21 different digital asset management systems, and Watson won on its own merits.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a highly competitive person, so if I'm going to win, I really want to know that I won in a meritocracy.
For sure.
Could you share maybe some of the things that were on that rubric, and what were you looking for? What was really important for you?
When we got together, we really tried to split up what were our individual needs. Me from the technical end, you from the content end. So you speak to a few of the ones on your side, and I'll take the...
For me, some of the basic stuff that you'd expect a DAM, that it could manage all the kind of file formats that we work with most. Also, I was hoping to find an ability to integrate with our existing CMS in a way that wouldn't change our process too much. The last thing I want to do is go through this really painful, challenging process of migrating tens of thousands of assets from their existing locations to a centralized place, all the meta that goes into turning it into the system we want it to be, and then have to change how we do business in a way that maybe makes our jobs more difficult. And so having part of that rubric be, how does this align with our current process? And can we make it align with that? So that was a really big deal for me.
From the technical side, what I was looking for was to ensure that we could deliver our assets over the technology, that it had a deep integration with the content delivery network, and that we could integrate it with the microservices that we were building around it to serve it. And of course, right? So API was critical. The open API that IBM Watson provides was absolutely essential. If you didn't have an open API, you didn't even make the rubric. I mean, that was a no-go for us.
Yeah, it's 2019. I feel like that should be standard now.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised how many folks don't have open APIs.
With that, I think this plays into one of my favorite quotes, and that's content is king and distribution is queen, and the two really need to work together. So it sounds like the scale of your operations had been held back by the way the assets were available and accessible, in addition to the technical part and how they were tagged, which could be one of the keys to actually automating content and personalization, which is something I think you do quite heavily and you're working on now. One of the things that we talked about earlier is you're kind of in a proof of concept stage using Content Hub. So what is your end goal and where are you now?
So where we are now, I'll start with that. So we brought on a digital asset management admin. So we brought a person on to sort of try to figure all this out. So his job is to dig into both the technical and sort of structural governance aspects of what it is going to mean to move all of our assets into this system. So we're looking at things like, what is the right taxonomy structure, and proving that out. So not just saying like, this is what looks right, but in practice. So ultimately our goal is going to be to take sort of like a mini version of what we want to do to complete the project and actually get the assets in there, tag them, and then see how can we deliver them and manipulate them the way we want to. Blaine can speak to it a little more in detail, but and writing little microservices, automation that allows us to do the unique things that we want to be able to do to get those tags synced in a way that require a little bit less manual intervention. So the ability to pull existing meta that's already part of it, maybe where it is today, to be able to do bulk uploads that send it up, pull it back down, reattach the necessary data, send it back up without a human having to go and key all that in. And then ultimately we want to get to a point where we can take what we've learned about how we need to govern the system to the people in the business that are going to be in there. The last thing we want to do is have it end up being the mess that we are trying to get ourselves out of today.
Yeah. Can't find any assets, and then you just get inbounds and spending times with emails and communication rather than actually getting to the marketing.
Right. Yeah, I want to touch on a point that you make, because it's such a great point. I loved your analogy, the content is king and distribution is queen, and that's so perfect. And because that's absolutely right. I've been in many industries over the years. I've been in the music industry, I've been in the audiovisual industry, I've been in the education industry, obviously in the education business now. And the constant theme throughout every one of those industries is content. It's all about that endpoint delivery. I've worked in K through 12, and now I work in higher ed. And no matter what industry you have, the content and the distribution of the content is always a persistent problem. So one of the things that this really boils down to is that humans just don't like to build meta. It's a tedious process. And the amount of effort that goes into proper categorization, proper tagging, curation of content is so tedious for humans that you start at it and it just doesn't hold in the long term. It's not realistic. And that is where the AI from Watson Content Hub in particular becomes very, very powerful, because it allows you to supplement that human process with some really powerful AI. I have a really fun story to share too. When we were getting our first demonstrations, we really wanted to test Watson. We really wanted to see what it could do. We took a picture and we uploaded it. It was a picture of a family. It was a family that were sitting on a tablecloth in a park. And their kids were running towards the camera as this picture was being taken. So what was really cool is when we uploaded that image into the system, Watson comes back within a few seconds and identifies the ethnicity and the demographics with both the parents. And it nailed what their ages were. Also interesting to see is where it didn't necessarily hit the mark. And to see where Watson was thinking. And I feel like that's an important story to share because it is AI, right? It is extraordinarily powerful, but everything has limits. And in this case, when it identified the folks in this picture, it identified the parents, nailed it perfectly. It detected it was an outdoor scene, right? It detected they were children. But it also said that they were playing soccer, which I thought was a really interesting observation for the AI to make. Now, as it turns out, they were not playing soccer, but they were running, and they were running towards the camera. So what that really tells me is that there's some really powerful stuff deep inside of Watson AI that is doing some pretty crazy stuff to try and identify all those things, all those soft bits of meta that humans it's just difficult for humans to do. Honestly, would a human think to put soccer or something like that, or lunch scene inside of a picture? But having Watson able to do that, the juxtaposition of that for a real life scenario is, if I need a lifestyle brand picture, and I've uploaded all the tens of thousands of assets that we have across all of our higher ed partners, if I need a lifestyle picture showing a person with a backpack, looking happy in the camera, in a beautiful outdoor setting, I could put those types of search phrases. And Watson can return that because it's got that AI driving that meta.
I love that, because people now search in full sentences, and they use lexicon that's constantly evolving. And that is one thing that Watson is great at doing, is keeping up with modern lexicon. But I also love the reality that you shared with us, and it, especially at the beginning, it needs to be fed and needs to learn. That's how every AI works. So from your technical perspective, how do you go about feeding an AI and thinking about this initial training session?
Oh, that's a great question. So the way that we feed the AI engine is through the command line interface and the syncing tools. One of the things that I really jumped out of my seat for when we had finally selected Watson and we were going to implement Content Hub was this notion of a GitHub repository with tons of code already built, one of which was a command line interface engine. And in that CLI, we can take that and provide full rsync-like capability to say, here's my repository of thousands of images, here's all this JSON data, let's sync it back up into the Watson system, fed with all the data that we're willing as humans, and then let the AI churn through it. Then we can go back, we can do this over API if we want, or we can have humans go through and curate that meta, massage it, make sure that all the bits are right. 99 times out of 100 it is. And then with that CLI, keep our local repository in sync with what's in Watson. So that CLI was a real winner. We didn't actually put that on the rubric, but we were very excited to see that kind of capability.
So I have one final question for you both. Thinking about where you were in the very beginning of this process and people like you in your roles, what's the one piece of advice you would give?
So if it's at the search for a vendor phase for me, it would be to be completely open to whoever you're investigating. Go in with no bias. That was really important for us, obviously knowing that we were already working with IBM. We wanted the best tool for our needs because the team that already had brought in IBM Content Automation and Content Hub has completely separate needs. So we needed to make sure that our needs were being met as perfectly as that rubric was going to be able to tell us. And then once now that we're beginning the process of proof of concept, I find it hugely helpful that we brought someone in to manage that. And we also were open-minded about what that skill set was. It's hard to find someone who has experience managing a DAM, let alone specifically Watson Content Hub. Mm-hmm. And so we just brought in someone that seemed highly organized and ambitious, that wanted to learn a product from the ground up with everyone else. They were coming in, and Blaine and I are learning this while he's learning it, and to be able to empower someone who really likes taking on something like that, it's been amazing. So for me as a manager, I kind of let him do his thing. He checks in with me, and just they're running at it. So I get benchmark check-in points of, we just got this script, it's working, super. So having someone that can manage all of the figuring out of exactly how are we going to do this. We, as a business, had no experience doing this before. So we couldn't go to some person in the business and say, how do we take 55,000 images, move them in, and make them governable? Yeah. We can move them in, that's fine, we can do that, but what do we do with them? What's the meta? And so figuring out all that and having one person who can stay focused, interface with IBM, and key stakeholders on Blaine's team has been tremendous.
And to piggyback off of that, the key piece of advice I would give is that from a technical perspective, it is so critical to view your executives as a partner and getting the things that you need done. And conversely, getting the executive leadership to view IT as needing to have a seat at that table. When you can work in partnership, executive leadership and IT together on the solution, that is how things get done. I have to remind people quite a bit that it's marketing, tech. That both of those sides have to work together in order for you to achieve what your business goals are. And the cool thing is that once you do, those business goals are achievable.
I'm so excited that you were here. Thank you for joining us. And now it's time to hear from you. This is our formal Q&A session, and please enter comments and questions into the chat box.